Oh, great. It's recording. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, Dan, thanks for joining us. For those of you who are watching this video who have no idea who we are, I'm John Choe. I'm one of the associate program directors at UW. Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I am a hospitalist at Harborview, and I'm one of the assistant program directors for Residency. And then I also am one of the college faculty for the med school and teach both preclinical and clinical med students.
Okay, great. So, I've used Zoom to watch a lot of meetings. I've taken part in a lot. But since we're talking about using Zoom for distance learning and distance teaching, can you share a little bit about the role that you have in the school and the program, and how you've used Zoom for teaching in the past in that role?
Yeah, I've done teaching via Zoom with groups as small as 3, all the way to a large lecture of 100. So and anything in between. So and those have been mostly with medical students. I can't recall that I've done it with residents at all, but the premise is pretty much the same, regardless of who your learners are.
And so for those who don't know about the different roles on Zoom, can you tell us a little bit about the host and what the host does and controls? And do you think that the person who's giving a talk or giving a lecture should necessarily be the same person as the host of the Zoom session?
So I think it's not that challenging once you get kind of adept at the Zoom to be able to manage it as the host and kind of control the session. But you can also designate people with the current accounts that the UW is giving out to everybody. You can designate someone else as a co-host, and they can also kind of drive, quote unquote, the ship as you're just focused on the lecture or teaching.
And so you did that for this session. So that might be someone who is not used to giving a talk on Zoom might be a co-host together with a chief resident or someone who is a little more familiar or is becoming more familiar with this, and could co-host together and have some of the same tools at the same time. So that way the speaker might be able to concentrate on giving the talk and let someone else do some of the driving, right?
Yeah, and again, the person who maybe starts the meeting could be the person that is most adept at Zoom, most comfortable with it. But then they could designate the speaker, the lecturer, the instructor to have some co-hosting duties where they, again, can do some of the functions, or actually all the functions, but really only manage the lecture teaching part.
So what are some of the tools that people have if they're the host? What can they use? What are the things that they can control?
Yeah, it might be easier. I'll share my screen so that people can kind of see what I'm seeing right now as the host. I'll
That'd
do
be
that.
great. And then if you do that, after you show us some of the tools, if you can also walk through by sharing the screen, where to click on sharing the screen.
Yep, I'll put that right now. So, well, actually, this might be challenging. I'm trying to think of if you will be able to see. Oh, I see. Okay, they've got it kind of broken up here. Oh, I've never seen it like this before. This is really interesting. Not for anybody who's watching right now. So, so if you're looking at my screen right now, there's a lot of things open, so it might be kind of distracting. But let me see if I can do this. Okay. So I've
I
just
like the peek into your calendar and see what you have planned for the rest of the week.
yeah, exactly. But I think that's important to have that up there so that people can know that you can have multiple things going on at once. And I think that's okay. I don't have any. I've already looked everything over. There's nothing in here I'm afraid to show. But this is like, you can just see this is my general desktop, right? And there's the different things. And if you see here, I've got John's questions in the background here. But what you'll see here is this taskbar that is part of the Zoom. And actually, when I'm not sharing my screen this way, for the regular Zoom app, it probably looks similar to yours, except that there's a video above it,
Yeah.
or a group of videos above it.
And Dan, just so you know that on my screen, I don't actually see that Zoom app that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it's invisible when you're sharing the screen. So
Yeah.
I'll probably have to try it and see so that I can show the people on this recording what the Zoom app looks like. But go ahead and walk through and tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, and so again, just the basic functions that some of you have, which is this, that you can mute your own audio, you can stop your video from showing your face, and just it'll either show your name, or if you've gone into the app and put a picture, it will just show your picture with your name. And then there's this next feature here called Manage Participants. So I'll open that. And this will be a pop-up window for you, and it shows you everybody who's in the Zoom meeting or session. And you can see here that there's myself and then John here, and I've gone to the More section, and if you go to More at the start of a meeting, you can actually designate who can be a co-host. So before this meeting started, I designated John as a co-host,
So
and you can see
Dan,
some
Dan,
interesting.
I'm going to pause you there for a second because again, no one is seeing this right now. So maybe what I'll do, if it's okay with you, is I'd like to try sharing my screen and seeing
Huh?
if you can talk me through what you're doing.
Yeah,
So since I'm a co-host, I should be able to do all of those same things, right?
correct.
So let's see here. How should I go about sharing my screen? So I see something on the top here called View Options. So I'm going to stop your sharing, and then I'm going to try to push this green button on the bottom that says Share with an arrow on the top and it says Share. So I'm going to open that up. And when I open that up, it gave me a choice of things that I can open. So I can open the Zoom
Uh-huh.
screen, and then
That's right.
let's see here. And so I can actually open a bunch of things. So let's try that. And let me try opening where I have this file. And so are you able to see what I'm looking at right now?
Yep, I can see that you've got your basically your folders with a bunch of files in them.
Yeah, and so I'm going to try to open those same documents. But in any case, so I am, let's see here. I'm going to resume the share. Um, so when I do this, I can open up a file, ignore all the random things that are on there. But let's look at what I had open here. And this is the document that you and I were looking at. So
Hmm.
again, I see the toolbar that you're talking about on the top. So there's this thing here now that says Manage Participants. And so I can click on that, like you're saying, and I can actually I can mute you. And that's really useful if people are getting a lot of feedback or there's a lot of back noise or something
Yep.
like that. And then so I can chat with you clicking on this directly. And so it looks like there's a lot of things that I can do with that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, or I'm going to stop this sharing and then let you continue to drive.
Yeah. Um, so I think there's also something you can do here. So when you go to share screen, as John was mentioning, it'll actually say, do you want to just share your desktop? Or there are other things that you can share directly. So for instance, I have opened the Microsoft Word doc that John sent me with the questions that he wanted to ask for this. And so I can share just that. So it's almost like it's a focused share. And that's useful for things like PowerPoint, where you can have a PowerPoint open, which maybe I'll just bring up a PowerPoint. But for right now, I'll click on the just sharing a document. And so right now, everybody is just seeing only my document. They're not seeing my desktop anymore. They're just seeing the Microsoft Word that I have open. Um, so, I think this could be useful. I just used this last week with a group of sub-interns who we did a morning report style case where I just typed up the case on a Word doc and everybody could follow along as they were presenting the patient. So I thought that that was kind of an easy way to do that. So I kind of view it as an easy whiteboard for text for a Word doc. Obviously,
That's
if you have you have it prepared, you could share that too.
No, that's a great idea. I think that for those that don't necessarily want to do a PowerPoint, but doing a whiteboard chalk talk type of thing, I think that's super useful.
Yeah.
So do you have an example of a PowerPoint that you can show people what it looks like?
Yeah, I'm going to stop this share and then
Mhm.
I'm going to share the whole screen again so you can see what I'm actually doing. So again, you can see everything kind of on my desktop. I'm gonna go, let's see, to a talk I just did on microaggressions a couple weeks ago.
Really curious about Grandma Helen's playlist there.
Yeah, that's my wife's grandmother. We made her a MP3 playlist. So I've got a PowerPoint that I'm bringing up on my desktop, and so I'm going to actually stop sharing my desktop, and I'm going to just share the PowerPoint. Like I said, you can actually click just on the PowerPoint. So now you really should just be only seeing the PowerPoint. And again, because I don't have it in view mode or
slideshow.
Thank you. I'm going to now though. And again, you should be able to see the actual PowerPoint. And so again, I can scroll. And
I'm noticing that things might be a little slow when it goes through Zoom.
It just takes a little bit for it to load, but then it does it. And there might be a little bit of a lag as you scroll through things. Mm-hmm. But again, this was a talk that we gave, a talk that you could give with your PowerPoint. And again, just going through your slides and chatting. It's just like PowerPoint when you're at a presentation. So this is, I think, that will be the most easy for people to kind of latch onto. If you already have a talk prepared, then it's not that hard to deliver it.
Right.
So.
And so on my screen that I'm looking at, it's still frozen. It's still not loaded in the slideshow. Is that showing on your end?
It is. So I wonder if there's just maybe a connection issue or something.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, it's certainly possible. There's a lot of people using a lot of high band right now.
Yeah.
So, but I'll trust you that just using the slideshow version should be able to show the slideshow version on our end. So we'll look for that.
Yeah. Can you see it now in just regular editing mode for the PowerPoint?
I see it in regular editing mode right now.
So worst case is that you don't have to put it into slide view, and you could just pull up things like this, because it probably will be large enough for the audience to still see your slides and not have to worry about actually putting it into slide view. So.
Yep. No, but I think it's a good consideration if people are depending on a lot of animations or a lot of video things, to know that there's going to be potentially a lag depending on connections, and to keep that in mind when people are putting together slides.
Yeah.
So just changing gears a little bit, have you had the opportunity to do a presentation or seen other people who've done presentations where they're in front of an audience, where they might actually be in front of a real whiteboard, or they're in front of a group of people who are giving a presentation using Zoom that way to record it? Have you had that opportunity before?
Yeah, I think the limiting step with that is that you just need a good enough camera to basically be right in front of the person as they're writing on a whiteboard. But yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, we tried that in our program, in our meeting last week, and the pitfalls that I noticed was that sound was really difficult to manage, because people in the audience asking questions really couldn't be heard by the people watching the Zoom. So that was a real problem. And as you say, the quality of the camera is really limited on a lot of laptops.
Yeah, and I will say that there is, when you go to share screen, Zoom does have a function where if you look on share screen, it will say something to the effect of whiteboard, and Zoom has a whiteboard, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's almost like a paint pad where you can, draw on it, you can put text on it. Other participants can also go onto the whiteboard and put whatever they want and annotate it with like emojis or text or whatever. I think that works best for people who are delivering things with a tablet. So you as the presenter could have your tablet and use that as the de facto whiteboard. I've never done it like that before, but that's what I've heard can be effective.
Yeah,
I think
that sounds like it sounds like it'd be hard without a touch screen or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. The whiteboard, I think, is really only if you have a tablet or touch screen, and not really on your phone. It would be kind of tight on it'd be a little too hard on a smartphone. And honestly, I think of that as like Zoom 3.0, like people who are doing that have been doing Zoom for a while and feel pretty comfortable.
But I think that's pretty good advice for the speakers, that trying to do it on a smartphone might not be the best plan, because everything looks so small, and you may not be able to have a fast enough connection or see exactly what you want without a laptop or desktop.
Yeah. Now, I know that there are people out in our UW community as faculty that have those one pagers. You know, I know like Trish Critic or some of the Poem Crit Care docs have everything in one page. Now, that is something you could have as a file, right, as a PDF or something, and you could show it as your share screen and kind of walk people through your one pager, and that would be pretty manageable for other people to see. You lose the effect of writing it in real time because it's probably already written out, but you could definitely do that too.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of ways that people can try to adapt what they already have, and not have to create a whole lot new, and still make this work for them.
Yeah.
Just switching gears a little bit, what's the best way that you think to manage questions? You said that you've had sessions where you've had many people on the Zoom call. What do you think is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'll share my screen again, and then we'll just show it here. So again, I've got my taskbar here. I don't know why it keeps showing up here, but that's okay. I think it's just trying to.
And again, on the recorded side here, I'm not seeing that, but go ahead and describe it, and we'll try to imagine it.
There's a taskbar, and even on your end, you should see something that says chat. And
yeah, I see it at the bottom. When I move my cursor, it's on the bottom of my screen that says chat.
Yep. And there you can have anybody who's in the meeting chatting with one another. So people can send messages to everyone who's in the session, or they can send it to people, one person specifically. So,
Okay.
so for instance, I can, send something to John individually, or I could send it to the whole quote unquote class. And again, those participants can also ask questions of, you, or your co-host. So this might be where it's helpful to have a co-host who can kind of moderate the questions as you're still presenting.
So I'm typing you a question or a comment. Is this the best way to ask questions? And so I've posted it to everyone, but as you say that, I think the times I've done this, I've made the mistake of not noticing that I was chatting with one person rather than the whole group with the question.
Yes, and there are ways in the advanced settings to turn off individual chat and only make it group chat. So
yeah.
Here I'll respond. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah. So there's ways to, yeah.
And so the session that we did last week, I think that it was helpful for the speaker to actually read it out loud in case people weren't going into the chat directly, to repeat the question and say, here's the question and here's our answer.
Yeah. There are other ways to engage the audience, but I think if people have never really used Zoom, then I would start with the chat box and then work your way up to the next thing I'm going to show you. I don't know if you can see on your end. I've got a poll. Can you see this poll?
I can't see the poll. There's a poll option on?
Yeah, so as a host of a meeting, you have the option to have polls, which are just like what they sound like. You can have either pre-developed questions, or on the fly, you can add a question. So let me see if I can do it here now. I will add a question and see if it pops up.
Oh, great.
Here. Now, you can do this ahead of time because otherwise it's really cumbersome. And then I should be able to launch this poll.
Oh, great. And so on my end, I see the question, is the session useful? And so I can choose.
Let's see if I can stop share to see if it pops up, but it should.
Yeah. So it's on my end. I see the poll here, so I'm going to answer. So how do I answer yes here? Let's see here. I see the questions, and I see that you created the questions, but I don't have a way to answer, but it sounds like there's a way to do that if it's set up ahead of time, correct?
Yeah, you should be able to do it on the fly, but I wonder if it's something to do with the hosting that we have
Yeah.
set up.
So I think that if someone really wanted to make this interactive and wanted to have an opportunity to do some of those things like audience response, people who might be familiar with using Poll Everywhere or something like that, actually there's some built-in features allowing them to do that. So how would a speaker do that ahead of time before the meeting? So like if I know that I'm giving a talk tomorrow, how would I go about creating those questions ahead of time?
So there, yeah. So I'm gonna share. Can you see this screen on my?
I see a Zoom screen. It looks like you've got a bunch of options here.
Yeah.
It
So
has
at
a
the
URL.
bottom, yeah, at the bottom of a meeting, you can have where you've created all of your poll questions, and you can make them all ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
And then in the Zoom session, when you hit the polling button, it'll ask you which question do you want to present to the audience. And so therefore you have, if you have 10 questions you've set up that would go along with your talk, you could, oh, this is now time for question 7. And you hit that. And you can title them and all that kind of stuff. So again, it's a quick way. I think it more serves to keep the audience engaged and see where they're at with things. But I think it's a good way to break up a Zoom session that's probably going past, the 25-minute mark
Yep.
of just you talking as the facilitator. So,
Do you have any other suggestions for things that people can do to make this more interactive or engaging? This seems like a pretty useful tool. We're
yeah.
always talking about things like small group discussions or shared hair kind of ideas. Have you had any of those things, or does it just not work that well in the way Zoom is set up?
No, there's actually ways that, and we are doing this more now with our med students. Is there's on the toolbar that hosts will see, it says manage participants.
Mm-hmm.
And you can click on it and you can actually put people into breakout rooms.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so there's a way to sorry, not in management. There's actually a separate button that says breakout rooms, and you can actually decide, it'll tell you how many participants you have, and then you can decide how many rooms you want to put them into. And you can either have Zoom do it automatically. So in other words, if you had 20 participants, you said, I want 4 rooms, then you know that 5 people will be in each room. The only drawback to the automatic is that it will insert anybody who's in the meeting, including a facilitator, into the small group. And so sometimes you just want your participants to be able to chat without you in the room. You can remove yourself, but if you wanted to be a little more directing about it, you could do it manually, and it'll show all the list of participants' names. So I think that's easiest when it's maybe no more than 15, 20 people, because you could be like, oh, I want these people in this room and I want these people. And I think it's something worth practicing at home. I've done it. I've practiced it at home with friends or my wife, doing a fake Zoom meeting and just practicing how to do it. And once you practice it a couple times, it's not that hard. And it's actually not that bad. The students that we've done it with have done pair shares, they've done small group work, and then you can bring everybody back into the large meeting and just do call outs to see what they talked about. So it's pretty neat.
So it sounds like a lot of the things that if people really want to do some of these things that we've been trying to do in our teaching, that there are ways of doing that without physically moving rooms, but virtually creating these breakout sessions and ways of doing that. How do you bring them back? You said that there's a button or tool?
On the breakout rooms, on the breakout rooms, it'll say bring them back.
Awesome.
And you can do, you can send them messages where you do things like 1 minute left, 30 seconds left. You can, if you want to, insert yourself into a group and say, hey, how's everybody doing? There's ways for the group to quote unquote raise a hand and say, hey, we have a question about something. So it very much works the way it would work if you were in a larger teaching room and had people break up into groups within a teaching room, and where you kind of walked around the room. That's kind of what that's serving as.
That's awesome. It sounds like one of the strong suggestions is if someone's wanting to do some of these advanced tools is to do a practice session and play with it, because you don't want to be doing it on the fly for the first time.
Yeah, and I think if people want to do this ahead of time and they know, even if they don't know how to do it exactly, they could ask any of us and
Yep.
who's helping coordinate these sessions, and we could figure it out.
That's awesome. And something, because we're doing it for this session, to say that there's a way to record these sessions, and
Yeah.
our program will try to figure out a way to upload these and to share them and make them widely available once we work out some of those things. But there is a record button for the host to start the recording of the session.
Yes, anything can be recorded. It just is it's just limited by the amount of hard drive space you have.
Yep. Yep.
I'm just noticing right now that with the free Zoom accounts that the UW has rolled out for all faculty, that it doesn't seem like the cloud recording is enabled. That's probably because it would overwhelm them. So for right now, if you record something, it will only record to the computer that's hosting, and therefore you just have to take that into account.
Yeah, and I've seen it where if you open the folder, there's an option for it takes you to a Zoom folder where you can actually get just the audio file as well as the full video file as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any last sort of common pitfalls that you want to let people know about? Any best practices and best tips?
Yeah, again, I think we've already mentioned, don't be scared, but it's okay if you're a little nervous. But again, if as long as you align your somebody else who has done a good number of Zoom sessions, then it should all kind of figure itself out. And no kind of technical glitch will probably, kind of stop the presentation completely. I've seen it many times where people are like, oh no, I can't share my screen, or I can't do this, and people will just quickly email the presentation to somebody else, and they're the host and they can share their screen. So there's lots of ways to be collaborative and troubleshoot things. And I think just thinking ahead of how you want it to play out. But I think for the basic things that most people who are doing teaching sessions would want to do, which is to give some kind of didactic, which may mean a PowerPoint, that's probably fairly easy to do. And then there's ways to facilitate, again, discussion amongst your audience.
Dan, this is awesome. It's really helpful, and I'm sure that we'll be talking more about how to make this better, but I'm going to make sure to share this widely among our speakers, and hopefully they won't be afraid to try a new thing here.
Yeah, and they can always reach out to me. You can find me in the directory.
Cool.
There's not many Cabreras, and I think I'm the first one that pops up. So
I'm going to stop the recording now and say thanks again.
Okay.